Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Item Bases. The first episode we covered was shields, second episode we covered was paladin shields, and today we're going to be covering armors. Armors is an interesting category that affects everybody when you're talking about rune words. Today we're going to be looking specifically at elite bases. It's a little difficult to have every single armor base because there's a lot of armor bases, especially if I were to go through every armor base of every quality. So we'll probably be doing 3 different videos on these, one for normal, one for exceptional, and one for elites. Elites being probably the one that people are most interested in. However, there are some very interesting niche uses for the exceptional and even the normal armors, believe it or not. Now, the first thing we need to discuss about the elite bases is that every single elite base is capable of 4 sockets. So if you want to get a elite base of any type with 4 sockets, you can. So whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 sockets, you can get it done. The next thing to talk about with armor bases is the penalties involved in the types. So each individual armor type has its own particular penalty. To go over those penalties, there's only 3 of them, of course. But basically, we have the light armor class. Light armor class is things like an Archon Plate, a Wyrmhide, the Wire Fleece is light armor, Scarab Husk, and I believe also the Great Hauberk is a light class armor, including the Dusk Shroud. So all of these basically are light class armors, and kind of the other thing that you need to know about light class armors is a lot of them look really doofy. As you can see right now, I'm basically naked with, you know, just like a leather armor on, and putting on the Dusk Shroud, I get some little pauldrons. The leather armor gives me like a little tabard, no pants. The Wire Fleece gives me like some gloves along with my pauldrons and some little booties. The Scarab Husk gives me a tabard, but no booties. Like, it's all very weird. And each one of these has a different appearance. Of course, the Great Hauberk has a very nice upper appearance, but again, it looks like you're wearing no pants, which I never liked with the Paladin. The Archon Plate has its own special appearance, too. It's probably one of the most well-armored versions of the light plates. And it doesn't really have plated boots, but you do get some like chainmail and leather boots, which is interesting. And each one of these armors has their own specific graphic. So not only are we looking at, well, you know, how does the armor perform, a lot of people are also looking at how does the armor make my character look, because I'm going to be using this armor for a long period of time, and I would like to choose, you know, one that makes my character look sexy, and not one that makes my character look like he's a hobo from Hoboken and Hoboken Town. Like the Necromancer specifically, dear God. And when he puts on some of these lower armors like the Dusk Shroud or like the Scarab Husk and things like that, he looks like he's on the street like begging for coins. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like if you're a character that's, you know, trying to like build yourself up and make yourself look like the immortal power that can kill Diablo, you know, himself and Baal himself, you know, like you'd think you'd look a little cooler than like a little cooler than that. Now, as far as the light armors go, let me make sure I didn't miss any. So we do have the Dusk Shroud. The Wyrmhide is a light class armor. The Wyrmhide here, the Wire Fleece, the Scarab Husk. Yes, the Great Hauberk is a light class. And trying to see if there's anything else besides the Archon Plate. So none of the other armors are light class besides the Archon Plate, which is the highest of the light class tier. You might be asking, well, what penalty does the light class armor have? Well, the answer to that question is none. So light class armors have no penalty to stamina drain or speed because they are the lightest of the classifications of armor. The second classification of armor that we have is medium, and medium has a 5% speed penalty. It also has a 50% increase in stamina drain. Medium armors are things like the Diamond Mail, the Boneweave armor, the Balrog skin, and I believe also the Kraken shell. the Lacquered Plate, which is right here. And finally, the Sacred Armor is also on this list. The Sacred Armor is a medium class armor, despite the fact that it is the highest defense armor in the game. It does, however, have a pretty hefty strength penalty. Now, as you put on each one of these armors, you'll definitely notice that there are differences between how the armors make you look. They'll add certain things, take certain things away. Some of them look more like plate. Some of them give you big shoulder pauldrons. Some of them give you, fancy boots and all sorts of interesting things. And a lot of people will actually choose what armor they want specifically by the appearance. I like to actually do that myself. I'm actually pretty fond of the way, for instance, that the Boneweave looks on the Amazon. And each particular character, of course, has a different appearance for these items. Then finally, we have the heavy armors. So there are 3 classifications of heavy armors within the game, and those are the Loricated mail, which for some reason is a heavy armor, despite being a rather low-tier version. We also have the Hellforge plate, and then finally the Shadow plate. These are the 3 heavy armors in the game, and heavy armors have a penalty of 100% increased stamina drain, as well as a 10% run-walk penalty. So these armors in particular tend to be not chosen as often, specifically because, well, people don't like to have those penalties. If you are farming and you do happen to find like a really nice eth version for your mercenary, a lot of the times people will use them anyway. But the biggest issue with these is just simply that they, usually have too much strength requirement, like the Shadow plate or the Hellforge plate, which is 196. The Loricated mail is definitely the lowest strength requirement of the lot of armors, and so it has its own specific thing going on. Of course, the heavy armors do have their own specific appearance as well. As you can see, this one is definitely like full plate. I've always been pretty fond of the Hellforge plate, and of course the Loricated mail looks a little bit more like the Archon plate. But don't be fooled. There are changes in every single armor, whether it's something small like literally just shoulder pauldrons, or whether it's something rather large like the addition of a tabard, or maybe you're moving on from a tabard to plate mail. And every single one just has a different look on the character. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of the armors, what is the real difference between the armors? Why choose one particular armor over the other? Well, the main differences between all of these armors are, number 1, the strength requirement, and number 2, the overall defense. That's really all you're actually looking at. So is the strength requirement too high to be untenable? If we were to arrange these to the highest strength requirement, the Shadow plate is definitely the highest at 230. 232 is the Sacred armor. 230 is the Shadow plate. So two strength difference there. These are definitely among the highest strength requirement armors in the game. Whereas something like the Archon plate, which is only 103, or the Dusk Shroud, which is only 49. So I mean, if we were to take these and arrange them by like their strength requirements, you can see the Scarab Husk is only 95. The Wire Fleece is 111, so that would definitely go next. We have the Great Hauberk, which is 118 strength requirement. We also have a level requirement on these, so the Dust Shroud definitely is the lowest level one that you can put like a 4-socket rune word in. That is an elite base. You could, of course, use some exceptional bases instead, but they may have less defense. And, arranging these by the strength requirement really kind of gives you an idea of how useful these can potentially be, given their level requirement, their strength requirement, and all that nonsense. So we've got 208 on the Lacquered plate. We've got 196 on the Hellforge. 160, 174 on the Kraken. And it looks like the Wyrmhide needs to be worked in here somewhere. So definitely in between these two. 149, 158, 165, 174, 196, 208, 230, and 235. So as you can see here now, we have them arranged specifically by their level requirements, or rather their strength requirements. And as you can see, the Dusk, Shroud, the Wyrmhide, the Scarab, Husk, the Archon Plate, and the Wire Fleece are by far the lower on the strength requirement end. The Dusk Shroud coming in at a very low 77 strength requirement and only level 49. Whereas the Sacred Armor is 232 and it's level 66, and it gets pretty nice defense at 690 defense in its optimal form. I'm pretty sure that is the correct numbers. Yeah, so 600 is the base, and then it has the 15% bonus, which is, of course, giving it a nice little 690. So there's a pretty big difference between the 537 that the Dusk Shroud is capable of and the 690 if you're talking about a multiplying character. So this is where things get interesting with armors, and especially armor choices, is because if you are a character that can multiply out your defense, like for instance a Barbarian that has Shout, Iron Skin, perhaps you're putting a Fortitude in this, and so Fortitude is then adding Chilling Armor, which is multiplying your armor even further, or maybe you're a Paladin using Holy Shield that's multiplying his armor. Small amounts of armor between like 537 and the 690 on a Sacred Armor can be a pretty big difference, especially when you consider you could be using something like Archon Plate with 602 versus the Dusk Shroud with 537. Now, one of the biggest issues with a lot of these lower tier armors, though, on the list is that things like the Dusk Shroud, 537 is the maximum that is capable of. The minimum is 361. The minimum for the Wyrmhide is 364. The minimum for the Scarab Husk is 369, and so forth and so on. So there's a very good chance that when you find the Dusk Shroud, the Wyrmhide, the Scarab Husk, or the Wire Fleece, they're going to be relatively low defense armors, and you're not really going to want them. The variable between the minimum and the maximum on a lot of these armors is actually pretty high, especially things like the Great Hauberk, which has a minimum of 395 and a maximum of 501. Which, of course, you also have to factor in things like the enhancement for finding superior versions. A lot of the times with these, you're going to choose the lowest strength option with the best defense. That's really what you're looking at. And the Archon Plate is a big standout for this because it has only 103 strength requirement with a level requirement of 63. And it has the strength requirement of only 103. So, you know, we're talking about a relatively high defense plate with a relatively low defense value. Now, there are other choices, of course. The Great Hauberk also stands out from the list because it is also a light class armor with decent defense and low strength requirement. It's not as good as the Archon Plate at 103. It does have 118 strength requirement, but it's still a fairly good choice. A lot of the times these other armors, if you find them in good condition, can certainly be useful depending on your character. So you may be playing a character that doesn't necessarily care too much about strength. Maybe you already have, you know, like 200 strength for whatever it is that you're putting on. In that case, then a lot of these higher armors with better defense could be good options. I would probably still avoid the heavy plates. The heavy plates are kind of nasty, and they're negative 10% faster run walk speed. So the Hellforge plate, the Shadow plate, and the Loricated mail are your three heavy class items. And these are the ones that you generally kind of want to avoid for your character because they will slow you down considerably. Now, if you are a character who just wants to wear these for the appearance, maybe you just really love the way that a Shadow plate looks on your character, or maybe you just really love the way that the particular graphics go with this particular armor, then, you know, more power to you. And in that case, you know, you're going to build your character around that particular armor. And, you know, rune words are kind of bland. I'm not going to lie. I've actually thought this many times. Rune words are just extremely bland looking because a lot of the times, everyone's going to make them in an Archon Plate. Archon Plate is like the main choice because of its low strength requirement and its relatively good defense. It just makes a really good choice, which means that everybody looks like this. We're all just like clone number 7,284 because we all just look like this, and it's annoying. So you'll find me oftentimes I will make rune words in armors that may not be specifically the best piece of armor, like for that particular build, but it's because I want to have the aesthetic that I would particularly want to choose. Like maybe I want to look like, you know, I'm wearing a Balrog skin. Maybe I like the plate mail with the chainmail boots, or maybe I want to, you know, put on a Kraken shell, so I have like the full plate going on with the big, giant shoulder pauldrons that come up on the sides of my ears, and each one of these armors with the different appearance comes into play. So not only do we have, obviously, defense, strength requirement, and level requirement, but then you got to add in the fourth mystical requirement, which is, how badass do I look? Do I look cool? Do I look cool? Because that's the question. If you don't look cool, then what, you know, what we doing with our day? What we doing? Anyway, I hope I've answered you guys' questions on what's going on with these particular armors. And I hope you'll join me for the next episode where we're going to talk about the exceptional armors, which is a much more interesting comparison between them, because the exceptional armors have a lot more of a vast difference between what they're capable of, including defense, strength requirement, level requirement, which is a little bit more varied than the elite armors. I feel like in the end, a lot of the elite armors are pretty much the same, because all of the elite armors have pretty decent defense. All of the elite armors have 4 sockets. All of the elite armors can be utilized on just about any character, with the exception of kind of like the higher strength requirement ones. And there's really not like a super huge big difference between them. Whereas the exceptional armors do have big differences. They're only capable of a certain number of sockets. They can't be used for certain rune words. They have very vast defense differences. So I hope you'll join me for that episode. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when I rant for like, 16 minutes on how my armor looks. And, you know, get out there and make your character look shiny. I mean, if you don't look good for yourself, then you know, you gotta get some armor on your character. You gotta look pretty. Got to look black.